Hello again, my 7th graders. I hope you guys have been having a great day so far. We're going to continue with our skeletal system and more move into injuries and diseases tonight. But before we get into that, a quick review. We know that we've been going over what makes up our skeletal system. So we have the axial skeleton, which remember is that central portion of our body, our appendicular, which is our appendages. Who remembers how many bones we have in the human body? Garrett.
207.
206. So that's 80 that makes up the axial and 126 that make up the appendicular. Last class we went over our joints, so we know that we discussed our ball and socket, and an example of that is your shoulder. We also talked about our hinge joints, which is our elbow. We talked about condyloid joints, which are in our hands at the metacarpal joint, as well as our saddle joint within our thumb. So just a quick review. We're going to move into what can actually affect our bones, and we're going to talk about those. So by the end of tonight's lesson, you should know the difference in different types of fractures as well as different diseases that can affect our bones. And the most important part is know how to keep our bones healthy. So this falls in line with our health goal 21 and 29, and I've provided those on your worksheets. So the first thing that we're going to jump into is skeletal injuries, and we're going to talk mainly looking at fractures. So you might be wondering why I passed everyone a glow stick. We're going to kind of use this to represent our bones and kind of get a visual aid for the type of fractures that we can have. So the first one is a hairline fracture, and this is a very thin break within the bone. So what I want you to do at the very end, just gently push, and you should see the kind of that light. Hopefully it'll work a little bit better than mine. But it should be a very thin stripe in it. That's just a hairline fracture. And then the next one that we're going to talk about is a complete fracture. So this is where the bone breaks into two pieces. So if you push on the other end, give it a good push, you'll see that it'll split it in half. And it kind of shows you those two broken pieces. A couple other types of fractures that we have are the single. So this is broken in one place. So where we've pushed before is that one fracture if we look at just the sole side of one end. Another one is the comminuted fracture, which if you take your glow stick and give it a good snap, you see how it fractures and kind of crunches through all there? That's what happens with a comminuted fracture. This tends to happen with a car crash. And what has to happen to repair that is they have to have surgery. A lot of the other breaks you can tend to put a brace on or a cast, and those will help to heal those. So it was just kind of a fun thing to give you a better visual of the types of fractures that can happen with our body. The last one that I want to talk about is bowing, which I honestly think is kind of cool for the fact that this doesn't actually break, it bends. And it mainly occurs in children, and that's because their bones are still soft and malleable. So you don't have that breakage that you do with an adult bone. So now that we've kind of covered fractures, we're going to look at different diseases. But before we do, who has had a broken bone in here? Wow, quite a few of you. Philip, do you remember the type?
It was broken in 3 pieces.
In 3 pieces?
Yep, collarbone.
Oh, geez. Shelby, did you raise your hand?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it was just probably a hairline one.
Just a hairline one? I've had a hairline myself. So now we're going to look at the different diseases that can affect our body. So we have osteoporosis, and this is a condition in which the bones become thin and brittle. And this is due to the fact that the bones have less density and there's less mass and less strength. As we see in our picture here, it's not as full and strong as the healthy bone. So some signs and symptoms of these are back pain. You can actually have loss of height over time, and fracture of hip and wrist. And this kind of leads into knowing that you have osteoporosis because you're more likely to have fractures in your bones because they're more brittle, they're more breakable. The next one that we're going to talk about is scoliosis, and this is a deformity of the spine in which the spine will actually show a lateral or an S-shaped curve in the bones, in the back. And this kind of depends on a few different things depending on the type. A lot of them, they aren't completely sure as to why it happens. Others, they do know that it is due to congenital disorders. So this is when a child is developing within a womb. there's something that doesn't form correctly, so that can cause this issue, as well as neuromuscular issues, so something with the brain, the muscular system, as well as the spinal cord. Those types of disorders can also affect your spine. And the last one that we're going to talk about is leukemia, and this is cancer of blood-forming cells. Do we remember why this is kind of plays a role with our bones? What do our bones make? They make red blood cells. Do we remember what it's called when it's formed in the bones? Does anybody remember? It's called hematopoiesis. So that's just a refresher from our very first class, but that's why it's really important, because our blood is what helps transport oxygen throughout our body. So when we have cancer in our blood cells, they're not helping the rest of our body get the oxygen that we need. So, let's see. All right, so we've kind of covered all the diseases and injuries that I want to go over tonight. Who can tell me something that we can do to keep our bones healthy? Garrett.
Drink milk,
Drink milk, that's right. Why?
because it's got calcium.
Exactly, and milk has calcium. Shelby, what's another thing that we can do?
Exercise.
Exercise is great. Who gives me another one? Philip.
Going with exercise, you can do any kind of strength training.
It's good because the strength training helps to build our bones as well as build the muscles around our joints to keep them strong and give them that good foundation. As Garrett said, calcium is really important for our bones because our bones store that calcium for the rest of our body to help with other functions, such as functions of our muscles, our heart, as well as our nerves. And it's also important because it helps to produce bone growth as well. There's one key thing that has to go along with calcium. Who knows what that is? Does anybody know? So for calcium, for our body to use it, we actually have to have vitamin D. Without it, our body doesn't really absorb it. Not so fun fact, I actually found out earlier this year that I have a vitamin D deficiency, so much to the point of where I have to be on a supplement for it. So for me to take really good healthy care of my bones and leading into as I get older, I have to make sure I take my supplement, drink a lot of calcium to kind of help both of those, and get outside, because a great source of vitamin D is in the sun. So we said milk. Who can tell me another one for calcium as a good source of vitamin or calcium? Does anybody know another? Garrett?
Maybe yogurt.
Yogurt, a lot of our dairy products, but also kale and broccoli are a good source of calcium. Who knows a good source of vitamin D? I already said the sun. Do we know another one? That's okay. Cheese is also really good. Egg yolks as well as fatty fish are also good sources of vitamin D. So to kind of give us a review and to get ready, well, real quick. So we went over our essential factors for bone health. This is, as we said, getting adequate amount of calcium, a good source of vitamin D because this helps to absorb that calcium, as well as exercise. As we said, that's really good, not just for our bones, but just for our general health altogether. So to get ready for our test next week, we are going to do a review game. So go ahead and get Kahoot set up. All right, let's try to get in there pretty quickly. All right, I'm going to give about 5 more seconds. 2, 1, we're starting without you. All right, so this is going to be a review from all 3 of our lessons. Like I said, we're getting ready for our test next week. So a hairline fracture is when the bone is broken in 2 places. So remember, a hairline fracture is that one thin fracture that we have. So this is a single fracture. Remember, single fracture is one place, so it makes it into two parts. That's right, there's 206 bones in the adult human body. That's osteoporosis, remember, because the bones become brittle, so you kind of lose your height as you get older. That's right, we said the axial, who missed that one? We've talked about this every class. The axial is that center portion of our body. We know that our appendicular is our appendages. Good job, it's the S shape. Huh. This one's going back, we've got to remember for this one. Good job, majority of you got that right. Oh, Katie pulling up in the lead now. Oh, about half and half. So fibrous joints are the ones that don't provide a lot of movement. Our synovial joints are the ones that actually produce the fluid that help cushion our bones. Oh, got to change up. Good job. So remember, our elbow is a type of hinge joint because it opens and it closes. Our ball and socket is our shoulder joint because we get a lot of that range of motion. Let's go. All right, so juvenile, I know this was from last one and we didn't really review at the beginning of the class, but juvenile arthritis affects 16-year-olds and younger. That's why I brought it up in class, because it affects your age range. That's right, they produce the greatest amount of movement. Remember, our, the other ones only in small amounts. All right, so we know that we have 206, so the axial is 80, the appendicular is 126. So our appendicular does serve as those attachment sites through our shoulder girdle and our pelvic girdle. And the last one. All right, so they're a type of gliding girdle because they slide across the top of each other. You guys did really good. Make sure that you guys go back and look over your information, all of your notes for your test next week. But before we leave, hang on, having issues. I want to leave you with 1 Corinthians 6, 19, 20. Do you not know that your bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. It's really important that while we are here on earth that we take care of our bodies so we can spread God's word to the people around us and help show the love that he has given to us. You guys have had great tonight. You guys have a wonderful night.